This week on Sakugan, we focus on world building and introducing a new main character. One of the strong points of the show is the world and how everything functions. So to see an entire episode showing you the life in a colony is a nice change of pace. To sum it up, it's like a typical day in Cowboy Bebop. But before I get into this review, let me know what you guys think about the show so far. The first 3 episodes of Sakugan were very mech versus kaiju heavy, so it only makes sense that this episode has none of that. Instead, we get a tour around the new colony, Jolly Jolly, and have a more grounded conflict with literal good guys versus bad guys. Gagumber and Memempu are both taken to jail after arriving and meet Mororo. He's the big cheese, working for the Bureau of Regulation. They smartly show that the two need to get blood work done to make sure they didn't bring anything over while they were outside. Little details like this really help build the world, and this entire sequence does exactly that. We learn that there's a bureau overseeing the entire labyrinth, and there's universal rules that people have to comply to. It seems to indicate that traveling between colonies isn't unheard of, and every colony is linked with shared tech, information, and laws. Anyways, Gagumber and Memempu are both let go, but are awaiting punishment, so it's more like they're out on bail. The colony Jolly Jolly is literally Italy, and I think they're in Rome because I saw a Colosseum. The tour of the colony is a bit distracting, since I swear they reuse the same assets as Pinion, the colony from the first 2 episodes. I actually didn't realize we were looking at a new colony and thought we'd just cut back to the first one. It wasn't until after I saw Gagumber and Memempu that I realized where we were. I'm sure it's expensive to make so many different detailed cities and backgrounds, but there was no real visual difference between the 2 colonies except for a few landmarks. I guess maybe they're trying to say that each colony is standardized and have this unified look, but after all this hype and build up to seeing how the other places look, this was a complete letdown. It has one cool feature, and that's the canal, which is a hologram in an empty canal. The bar we go to a bit later on is also different than what we've seen so far, so that was a nice touch. So anyways, there's a lot of looking around until we go to that bar I just mentioned. Gagumber partakes in tired womanizer tropes until we meet our new main character, Zackletu. She seems to be spying on Gagumber and Memempu since episode 1, but we don't get any payoff to that here. Instead, she accidentally gets him in trouble with the Mafia after flirting with him for no apparent reason. One cool thing about this whole setup is the Mafia, and establishing that there's a whole underworld in the labyrinth. Again, it's another tiny detail that really builds up the world and makes it feel more alive. The Mafia here are looking for Zackletu since she has a massive bounty on her head. That's really it. Nothing too crazy or deep, they just want the money. Gagumber is offered to work for the Mafia for a split of the profits, but he turns it down. Instead, he gets freed by Zackletu on the agreement that he'll pay her $1 million. Then we get into a big chase and action scene that really reminded me of Cowboy Bebop. Once Gagumber learns of her true nature, the dynamic of Gagumber and Zackletu feels like Spike and Faye. Add that into them fighting the Mafia in a nice looking town at night with some great lighting, and you've got yourself a scene straight from Cowboy Bebop. It all ends when Memempu comes to save the day. They part ways after the cops come, and Gagumber reveals he has no money to give to Zackletu. She leaves telling him that they haven't seen the last of her, and that's it. Overall, it's not a bad episode. It's not particularly important in the grand scheme of things, and it's not really a breather episode either, since there was a lot of action and shouting. But the smaller scale and commitment to building the world does make it feel fresh in comparison to the first 3 episodes. While not story important, I think this week's episode did a lot more than Takt Op's recent episode with its terrible pacing, where you have stock characters spouting exposition, brooding, and fighting for no reason, taking up all the runtime. Everything in Sakugan flows really well, and there's tons of breathing room in between scenes. There's action scenes, but they don't take up the entire episode. You still have enough time to build up the new city the characters are in, introduce new characters, and show off their dynamics with the main characters in different situations. All in one episode without feeling rushed or forced. My only gripe with this episode is the new character Zackletu. I know it's early, but from the little we see of her, she's not that interesting. She's your usual shrewd money-loving thief. Clearly she has an ulterior motive in her interest in Gagumber, so there's lots of room for her to grow. But going on first impressions, she didn't really leave a great one on me. Anyways, Sakugan is still great and continues to challenge Rumble Garandol for the best anime of the fall 2021 season. With that said, if you've watched this far into the video, that must mean you liked it, right? If that's the case, make sure to like this video and leave me a comment telling me you finished the video. Until next time, see ya!